This meeting is being recorded, and we will go through the agenda. So if we go to the next slide, Vivian. So again, this is our superintendent's advisory committee, and we appreciate everybody's input in terms of assisting us as we deal with this budget section. So let's go back. You can tell we miss Anika, right? So just in terms of, if we go back. Okay, so just in terms of our board members, we may have some board members in the audience, but again, this committee not only advises our superintendent, but obviously we all work with our board, and their pictures are right here. So we are excited to start looking at our budget development process and also get towards a budget target. Next slide. Of course, for participation, please rename your screen to reflect your name and your group. And as a reminder, only SBAC voting representatives and staff can engage in discussions. Please raise your hand via Zoom if you'd like to speak. And again, for voting, only SBAC voting members and participating staff can use the chat. And meeting participants and audience can only speak during public comments. And again, for voting, only our SBAC. Okay, Natasha, I see your note. So only SBAC representatives can vote. Next slide. And as a reminder of the purpose of the committee and all of what we're trying to do here in our meetings, we are serving on the Berkeley Unified School District in an advisory capacity on matters that pertain to district finances. So to review the budget procedures as required by the superintendent or the committee's initiative, to provide written recommendations and oral presentations to the Board of Education at the superintendent's request or at the committee's initiative. Next slide. And again, everything that we do, we're grounded in our mission and our 4 E's. We had a quiz in one of our management team meetings. I think everybody now knows our 4 E's: excellence, equity, engagement, and enrichment. Next slide. So this is our agenda. This is what we're hoping to get through today. We're going to do, I think Vivian can see everybody who's here, so she'll do the roll call just based on who's actually in attendance. We are going to do public comments. If anybody's here for public comments, please raise their hands and let Vivian know. We're going to give you 2 minutes for public comments. We're going to have a budget update. We're going to be looking at the second interim budget report, and Emily's going to take us through that. I'm going to take us towards the target, reviewing our proposed budget target. And I'm also going to share with you some budget reduction strategies that we've come up as a team. And that's going to be, we're going to expect you to discuss if you have any questions or any feedback that will be helpful as well. So, so let's go to public comments. Do we have anybody here for public comments?
I have a list of people. We'll start with Eva Diaz. Eva, we're going to give you 2 minutes to speak.
Hello. I would like to support the continuation of the contract with Liberated Ethnic Studies curriculum consortium that was started in the 22-23 school year, and I would like to support the continuation of this curriculum. There is now some group of parents that want to cancel the curriculum because it teaches the history of of our cultures with a wider perspective, and they feel threatened by it. But the fact is that this was a choice that was made by teachers, by students, by communities, our community, and it is the choice that was found more representative of um, the the way our community are very progressive and diverse community want to teach history to their students. So that my comment is about this and to support the continuation of the curriculum and the funding of this at this contract. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next public comment is Angelica Macedon. Angelica? Okay.
Hi. Can I defer to Andrew, please? I didn't raise my hand.
Okay.
Hi, this is Andrew Ulmer. I'm a member of the PTA at John Muir, and I'd like to make a comment on behalf of our president, Angelica, who wasn't able to come tonight. And then I'd like to support the OFEE coordinator role for John Muir. Briefly, the comment from Angelica is that she was disappointed that this meeting was scheduled at the same time as the district superintendent's African American Success Advisory Committee. As an ally, I'd like to represent that consideration wasn't given to all the Black families in our district to participate in these two meetings. And that was very disappointing for our PTA. The other comment that I'd like to make is that the OFEE coordinator role is extremely helpful for our community at John Muir. And we would like a guarantee that the role will not be eliminated. I have a letter, I don't have time to read it, but there are multiple ways that the OFEE coordinator is indispensable in helping with financial, social, and housing issues and other issues that cannot be handled in any other way for our school. And that's my statement. I am probably reaching the end of my time, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. The next person I have is Ellen Brodsky.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I have a cold, but I'm speaking as a Jewish parent of two alumni students now in their 30s who benefited from BUSD's Ethnic Studies program. They have continually spoken to me how important it was. And I'm also a member of the BUSD Ethnic Studies Advisory Committee. I know that there is a small but persistent group of Jewish parents who have attacked the Liberated Ethnic Studies Consortium and its curriculum as being anti-Semitic. I'm here on behalf of numbers of Jewish parents who feel that an ethnic studies curriculum that includes Arab American lesson plans, including the teaching about the history of Palestinians and their current situation, is not anti-Semitic. Criticism of Israel's policies toward Palestinians is not anti-Semitic. And actually, Zionism doesn't equal Judaism. So I just want to make it clear that there are lots of Jewish members of our community, including parents, who want to continue the contract with Liberated Ethnic Studies. This is an important way in which the district commits to its anti-racism education. And stopping the contract would be a slap in the face to communities of color. And as a white Ashkenazi Jewish parent, I don't like having the Jewish community pitted against communities of color. And so I ask that you really make a point of including the money for ethnic studies and continuing the contract with the Liberated Ethnic Studies Consortium. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is Evan Bissell.
Hi all. Good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Evan Bissell. I'm a parent of a BAM student. Hi, Mr. Molina. Good to see you. And I'm calling just to also voice my support for ethnic studies and particularly the Liberated Ethnic Studies contract. I'm a graduate of ethnic studies programs myself, and they're definitely some of the most important cases I've taken in my life, and some of the most important learning spaces. I think there's a conception that ethnic studies is about attacking existing things, or kind of what are the norms. And I gotta say that as a white man who grew up in Marin and now lives in Berkeley and thinking about all these things, ethnic studies has been hugely helpful for me navigating and understanding how to be in good relationship in the world. It's shaped how I parent. It's shaped how I am as a community member and as a friend. And a lot of times these types of attacks on things like ethnic studies are very similar to the types of attacks that were faced when African American Studies Department was brought forward in the 60s and also in the 80s again when Chicano Studies was brought forward as well, also ethnic studies in Berkeley schools. And so we have to see those attacks against what is called a radical educational program as something that's actually just a response to the changing of the status quo and the norms. So I hope these opportunities are extended to my kids as they move up through BUSD, and maybe Mr. Molina, we can talk also. But this work, the other part I want to say is that this work really does help young people confront racial bias and racial prejudice, right? And that's what we're here to kind of think about and understand, how we create better school environments for all our young people so that they can feel safe, so that they can learn together in that way. So just want to voice my support for that. It's multiple benefits through the budget process by investing in this kind of education through something like Liberated Ethnic Studies for our students and for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Diana Mirren.
Hi, greetings. My name is Diana Negrin. I am a Berkeley High School alumni, and I'm a parent of a child at Silvia Mendez and a parent of a child at Longfellow. I also have other family members that are part of the district. And I'm here also to voice my support for extending and renewing the contract with Liberated Ethnic Studies. First, because we have invested resources over so many decades in this community towards building an educational curriculum that really reflects our values, our multicultural community. I myself benefited. I was one of the first cohorts to get 9th grade ethnic studies at Berkeley High School, and it enriched me deeply. As a Latina, it was very important to be a part as a student of processes that engaged us in the curriculum building. And I thought that was one of the most beautiful parts of the process that is ethnic studies, is that it isn't one that is always just predetermined and imposed. It is one that has really grown over decades, over different generations. So it's been quite sad to see hostilities towards this long-term work that has really sought to bridge a lot of different community experiences together. And we do have a history in our community of also speaking up to local and global injustices. And so, just asking the committee to be really vigilant of the predatory nature of the accusations that we're seeing and the type of harassment that it's reflecting across teachers and students, as well as curriculum. So with all my heart, I hope that we can move through this as a community and hold our values together and extend this really valuable work. Like Evan Bissell said, I really hope my children also benefit from this curriculum. I've been excited to see them benefit from this curriculum in the near future, because so far they have had a pretty Eurocentric experience in elementary school, even at Silvia Mendez. So, there's a lot of work left to do to make our community inclusive. And I just want to thank all of the parents, all of the teachers that are coming together right now to hold our community together through this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, Janice Tanamura.
Hello. Hi. Hello. My name is Janice Tanamura. I have a student at BAM and a student at Longfellow, and I'm also on the Ethnic Studies Advisory Committee. And I just wanted to share some of our findings after meeting for 2 years. It's been a really rigorous and inclusive process that has included I had diverse input from students, community members, staff, teachers, we looked at a lot of data from feedback from students, from listening circles, and it's very clear that the community in Berkeley really wants more ethnic studies. And the research shows that ethnic studies will, in fact, have a positive impact on all students in terms of engagement, in terms of academic achievement. And I think that directly addresses the main issue that I think is really pressing in Berkeley, which is the equity gap in Berkeley. So I think that it's important to keep focused on the fact that ethnic studies will really benefit the students who need it the most. And I also want to invite the committee here to learn more about ethnic studies. People in our committee are happy to come and speak at a later date to kind of go over our fact sheet in ethnic studies that we put together. I could also share it in the chat if you're interested. There's a fast fact sheet just for people who may not be very familiar with what ethnic studies is. It really kind of encapsulates why our committee in particular was so enthusiastic about recommending the LESMCC curriculum. The members of that curriculum are the best teachers, the best academics in their field. And we are really privileged to be able to work with them. So we highly recommend that our contract with LESMCC be extended into future years because they've just started to write the curriculum. We haven't seen the benefits of the work that's been happening, and we won't be able to see it unless the contract is extended. And just want to reiterate what others said, that to end the contract now would really be a huge setback for all the effort. Okay,
Janice,
thank you.
Thank you. So do we have anyone else for public comment?
Yeah, I have my hand up.
Okay, Christina.
That's okay. Thank you. Hi, I'm Christina Harb. I am the EL site coordinator and a newcomer teacher at King Middle School. I'm here to speak in a couple different capacities in support of the Budget Advisory Committee, ensuring that we do have the funding to renew the contract for Liberated Ethnic Studies next year and beyond. I am on the board of our ELAC committee as well. And so our ELAC committee represents 60 EL families, and half of those families are newcomer families. They're international, they're from all over the world. And so our ELAC officially endorsed the Liberated Ethnic Studies curriculum and has voted in favor of endorsing it for next year. I also want to point out that it's been endorsed by over 60 other anti-racist organizations, including a lot of local organizations. The Berkeley Federation of Teachers Union, our teachers union, has also signed a letter in support of renewing the contract, as well as the BUSD API Parent Group and the BUSD Jewish Parents for Collective Liberation Group and the California Council on Teacher Education. It is widely popular and widely endorsed. I also would like to say that something I've been learning more about the curriculum is the way that it is culturally responsive, which means that the collaboration between our teachers and the teachers from Liberated Ethnic Studies can co-create curriculum that makes sense for our students in our population. So today, for example, we saw something really historic happen where the West Berkeley Shell Mound is officially being rematriated into Ohlone hands and is going to be in the control and stewarded by the Ohlone people. And that's something that's really beautiful and unique to Berkeley. And so with Liberated Ethnic Studies, that is something that can get put into our curriculum for our young students. If we were to adopt a one-size-fits-all curriculum, our students would not get the benefits of having culturally responsive ethnic studies.
Okay,
so thank you.
So Rose Lynn, do you want to speak? Okay, so I'm going to read a comment from someone who mailed it in who's unable to attend. It says, "Dear Superintendent and members of SBAC, I am not able to join the meeting this evening and wanted to provide comment to the committee as both a BIPOC parent and a member of the Ethnic Studies Advisory Committee. I joined ESAC when it started nearly 3 years ago and am proud to work alongside." Jennifer, you want to mute? "Alongside a diverse group of thoughtful and caring students, parents, teachers, and community members. Our committee began with the study of feedback from student parent groups, bilingual listener sessions, and a district-wide survey so we could collectively understand our communities, ask things like students wish to have lessons on race and ethnicity. Earlier than ninth grade, to have more than BIPOC teachers that are a reflection of themselves and to be able to study their own diverse and often intersectional identities and histories. After a year of meetings, studies, and analysis, our committee enthusiastically recommended the Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Consortium because they are subject matter experts in ethnic studies. LES-MCC is a very diverse group of master educators that work collaboratively with our brilliant teachers to create standards, align lessons that give our kids access to shared history. These lessons encourage reflection and help students hone their critical thinking skills. It was during a recent ESAC meeting where we reviewed a pilot lesson on solidarity for older students, and I saw my own family history reflected in the lesson, and I was completely overwhelmed. My grandfather was a migrant farm worker, and the lesson covered the things my grandfather shared with me in our home about working in the fields, about the Delano grape strike, our connection to Cesar Chavez, and how to be safe. If they could see their plight reflected in a lesson in a classroom, I can only imagine how proud they'd be to know their grandfather will learn about their struggle against oppression in schools. I'm writing to ask this committee to support an extension of the contract with LES-MCC and to support the work of ESAC committee has poured into ethnic studies. ESAC stands behind our specific recommendation because we see the transformative potential of ethnic studies. Thank you for supporting our kids. Cielo Rios, ESAC member, Emerson parent, and proud Chicana. So is that the end of public comment? Okay, Pauline, it's yours.
Thanks, Vivian. I want to thank everybody that came out for public comments. We will take into account what was said and we'll make sure it gets shared with everyone in cabinet and in other groups. So thanks again for coming out. So at this point in our agenda, Vivian, you're okay with taking roll call as is, or do you want
Yeah,
to
no,
go?
I can take it as we go through
Okay.
the slides. I'll see everyone.
Okay, so next we're going to look at our second interim budget report. Emily is going to take us through that, and this was the second interim budget report that was shared with the board at the last meeting. So we can have Emily present the second interim budget report. And we can go to the next slide, Vivian. Let's go to the next slide. We'll come back to that. And we'll come back to that. Sorry. This needs its own section.
Are we going to forward or backwards?
We
Forward.
want the slide that says budget highlights, please, Vivian. Thanks. All right, so I'm Emily. I'm the Executive Director of Fiscal Services, and I have the pleasure of being on Pauline's team. So I'm going to be just sharing with you some of the main takeaways from the second interim presentation. So this was presented at the March 6th board meeting, and it is an annual presentation that all school districts make at this time of year to present on expenditures that have happened from the beginning of the year through the end of January. Our main takeaway is that we have a positive certification, which means that Berkeley Unified is maintaining a positive ending fund balance for the current year and the 2 subsequent years. However, this positive certification relies on us making budget reductions in both next year and the following year. And because of this, Alameda County Office of Education is requiring a formal recognition of the budget reductions by the board, which they did make. We've not identified which specific reductions we're going to make. This is what we're talking through in this group and many other groups, but the board has recognized that reductions will be necessary in order for us to maintain that positive certification. We also updated some of our assumptions around our revenue based on our unduplicated pupil count, our reduced enrollment, which is based around our data that's collected in October and presented through CalPADS, so presented to the state. Can we go to the next slide, please, Vivian? So a little about the timeline. We're essentially operating in 2 years at the same time. And so in January, the governor proposed the budget for next year for 24-25. And from February all the way through to June, the board will be receiving updates on the budget and on reductions for 24-25. In February through May, we'll be doing the budget development process to create the budget. But also right now in March 2024, we are presenting the second interim report, which is on the current year. And so even as we're getting updated forecasting on what our revenue will be for the current year and our spending will be for the current year, we're using that data as well as data from the state to be able to inform our projections for the subsequent year. So we're reporting on the current year and we're planning and projecting for the subsequent years. In May 2024, we'll get an update from the governor on his proposed budget. That's called the May revision. And then in June of 2024 is when the LCAP as well as the budget will be approved for 24-25, so for next school year by the board. And then the process, we begin the new fiscal year on July 1st, and the process begins again for the subsequent year. If we can go to the next slide. All right, I think I'll hand it back to Pauline, or do you want me to take these slides as well, Pauline?
You can go ahead and take these, Emily.
All right. So as we're talking about this budget reduction target, we use the multi-year plan to inform what is that target amount and how will we go about approaching it. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Vivian. So this is our multi-year projections. And so you'll see that there are 3 columns. There's our current year, 2023-24. There's next year, 2024-25, which is what we're planning for. And then there's 25-26. And so you'll see that our expenditures are in that first line. And right below it, we have our budget adjustments. And so in order for us to have that positive ending balance, that those green bars down at the bottom that show that we still have enough money to be able to meet our requirements for this year and the subsequent 2 years, we're looking at needing to make budget adjustments of $6 million in 24-25. And that will need to continue into 25-26 with an additional $2.6 million of reductions on top of that. So if we make ongoing reductions of $6 million in 24-25, then it's an additional $2.6 million to reach that $8.6 million. And so you can see when you look down at the undesignated fund balance in the very bottom line, if we're doing that, then we are able to have that positive ending balance. But if you're looking at the blue line in the middle, you'll see that we are deficit spending, which means that our fund balance is negative. We're spending down into those reserves. So we're spending more money than we're bringing in. Can you go to the next slide, please, Vivian? And so this process of spending more money than you're bringing in is called a structural deficit. And so if we go to the next slide, and then one more slide, what we want to talk about is the strategy to be able to reduce that structural deficit. And so you'll see this is the same slide we were just looking at. In second interim, we'll need to make a $6 million reduction in 24-25. And that still leaves us in the blue there with a change in fund balance of $1.7 million, which means we're deficit spending $1.7 million. And so in the proposal that we'll show you on the next slide, if we're setting a goal to reduce that structural deficit, which is what sound fiscal practice is, to not be spending higher than our revenue, to reduce that structural deficit to just $0.6 million, we would need to be reducing our budget by an additional $1.1 million for next year. And so what that would leave us with is a revised budget adjustment for 24-25 of $7.1 million. So the $6 million plus an additional $1.1 million to reduce that deficit spending down. And that's what you'll see if we go to the next slide, please, Vivian. So you'll see here we have our expenditures, budget reduction, our budget adjustments of $6 million in 24-25, an additional $1.1 million of reductions for that total of $7.1 million of reductions. And if you look, that then in the blue brings our change in fund balance down to just $0.6 million. And so when you then look at the ending fund balance at the very bottom, that's a $2 million ending fund balance. So that's our ending fund balance on top of what our board designated amounts are and what our requirements are, because what we're legally required by the state to have as a minimum balance we're meeting. That's part of the requirement of having a positive certification, but it's also best practice to have above that, because that ensures that if unforeseen things come up, either the revenue changes from what was projected, the expenditures come in higher, that the district is prepared to be able to meet its financial obligations. And I will now turn it back towards Pauline to talk about strategies as we're looking at the $7.1 million target.
Thanks, Emily. But before we do, I would be remiss if I did not go back to our BSEP slide. And if Vivian, if you could just go back to where we were before that. Before that. There we go. So everybody knows by now what the momentous occasion with our BSEP program. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathy, who is here, our BSEP director. And Kathy, if you could just say a few words, and I'm really thanking all of our Berkeley voters and everybody that did their part to make this happen. So Kathy.
Thanks, Pauline. Hi, everybody. I am Kathy Fleming. I'm the Director of Local Resources here for the district. And one of my great responsibilities is managing the BSEP resource. And we're happy to report as of Monday, BSEP is passing at the rate of 87.23%. And as you all know, we probably know, we only need 2/3. So while it hasn't been certified as official yet, which will happen on April 5th, we're very confident that this is the outcome we've been looking for. So I'd like to take a moment to thank members of the P&O committee who are here, Nicole and Vicky, for your great work on and partnership in developing the measure for the ballot, and all of your time you've dedicated to the oversight of the measure, and everyone here and the community at large who has demonstrated the support for this very important funding stream, which is about 20% of our current budget this year, and funds our small class size. That's 1 out of every 3 teachers, our arts and music program, libraries, many instructional and student support programs that are essential to help our students thrive and grow. So thanks again, everyone. And Pauline, thanks for the moment to acknowledge everyone here for that.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. That was really impressive. And of course, we have Natasha Beery, who led the charge. How many years ago, Natasha? And we've been really fortunate to have the support for our students. BSEP does a great, excellent job in terms of support for all our students and our sites. So what does Vicky say? Vicky, did you want to say something? I see it's something in the chat.
I was answering someone's question.
Oh, separate conversation. Okay, so let's go back to where we were in terms of the target. So this is an important important information that you guys that will direct our process as we go through budget development. Landing on a target is a very significant milestone in terms of trying to meet our make sure we have a balanced budget and that we will be fiscally solvent. So if we go to the next slide, Vivian, where we identified 2 more actually. So I want to make sure, let's go one more slide, Vivian. So I just want to make sure that actually we need one more, sorry, Vivian. So we talked about this is the slide that I need us to all focus us on. The total budget adjustment or the target is $7.1 million ongoing, which means there's an additional $2.6 million in 25-26. So I want to see if there's any discussion on how we landed on this target and any other suggestions that the committee may have. So Vicky, I see your hand. We'll take your question, Vicky, and then Nicole.
So I make this comment with the utmost respect for you guys, and know that this is really difficult. But I guess my question is it feels a little bit like a bait and switch from the past several months. We started off saying that we were reducing our income by 3.4 million, and so that was the shortage. And then we started being presented with that 6 number, and that was supposed to address the deficit. And then now today we're being told it's another 1 million. And I'm just wondering, like, we've seen in these reports that the ending fund balance was below that too all along. Like, why did it take us so long to get to this number, and just slowly be increasing it over time? And then, like, if we also, like, last year, why didn't we, if we were already having a structural deficit spending, why didn't we not deficit spend last year so we wouldn't have to cut so much this year, I guess, is sort of my frustration.
So Vicky, it's not a bait and switch. It's thanks, Natasha. We just got a chat from Natasha. So what it is, as we get information, we share it with the group. The first thing that we got, as you saw in the budget cycle, was the governor's January budget. We know that the COLA at that point was going from 3.44 down to 0.76. So we knew at that point that we were actually losing $3.3 million in revenue. That was just the revenue side. And I think I shared that with you in one of our meetings. We looked at expenses, and the most recent time that we looked at our expenses is the second interim that just went to the board. So based on the assumptions at the second interim, we had ongoing expenses that increased at the second interim, and we had one-time expenses and one-time increases in expenses and one-time reductions. The multi-year projection removes these one-times. However, we have to build in the fact that there were increased expenses that were identified at second interim. And a budget is not a final document. It's a work in progress. As the assumptions change, it's our responsibility to share it with everyone with full transparency. So with the second interim, we had decided that a $6 million reduction would keep us positive. So that was to address the requirements from law or CDE or Alameda County Office of Ed to make sure we had a positive ending fund balance. We took this opportunity to make sure we were fiscally prudent in looking at the change in ending fund balance. So instead of deficit spending by $1.7 million, our target was to deficit spend by at least $600,000. In an ideal world, that number should be 0 or positive. We shouldn't be spending down our savings account because we will be broke. Not a good approach. So at one point we said, well, I also shared with this group, if we were to clear the deficit altogether, this is what the number would look like. In terms of working with cabinet and with other members of fiscal management in the district, we have determined that with a deficit spending of 0.6, we can live with that somewhat to spend on the ending fund balance. And as Emily says, it gives us a cushion of $2 million in case our expenses come in higher or if there are further reductions in revenue. So there's no bait and switch. That's not what I'm about. I'm about full transparency, and I have been for the last 15 years in this district. So it's a moving target, and our responsibility is to share with you updates as that target moves. So the $7.1 million is where we're landing now after the second interim, based on the most recent recent numbers that we have, or the most recent the COLA and the various components of the budget. This number may change again, Vicky. We still have the May revise, right? And then if the May revise comes in and says, wait, you're getting a negative COLA, guess what? We're gonna have to address that as well. So the budget is a dynamic document. It's not carved in stone, and our responsibility is to share with you updates as situations change. So that is why the numbers are not going to be always, they're going to be constantly changing, and our responsibility is to get you up to speed as those numbers change. So the most recent number that we're looking at as a target is 7.1 million and 9.7 million. Any other questions?
Can I ask a clarifying question on that? So what I heard you say, and I apologize, I meant no offense by that. I know that wasn't what actually happened. It just felt that way. Is that so that ending fund balance is a 2, right? So let's say 3 months ago when we looked at this, is what I'm hearing is that we actually ended up having increased costs, so that with the previous numbers, the ending fund balance was a 2, but now it's no longer a 2, and that's why we have to make the additional adjustment to keep it at 2? Or was it 0.9 when we looked at this? I couldn't find the old deck. Had it been 0.9 in previous reports?
So 0.9, just let me share this with you. 0.9 may have a positive balance, but that's no way to run an operation. 0.9 is $900,000. When you take into account our payroll is $5 million a year, we're still not being as fiscally prudent as we could be. We do have an amount set aside for the state required 3% of the reserve, but leaving a balance of $2 million is barely enough to even cover any unforeseen expenses or reduction in revenue. So that number did go up, but it's a number that we now feel comfortable in sharing that, okay, it's doable if we cut $7.1 million, but at the same time, that number technically should be significantly higher, but in light of reduced revenue, and in light of increased expenses, we're presenting this as a fiscal alternative to keep the district positive, and also to give us a little bit of a cushion in terms of any unforeseen circumstances.
So Nicole
Okay.
has a question, and then Beatrice.
Okay, yes, Nicole.
Oh, thank you so much. So yes, I think that my first quick question was why we're still projecting increased cuts in 25, 26, and it sounds like that's it, because the ending fund balance best practice is to have it closer to 4% than 2%, I'm assuming. And then the second question, basically, so correct me if I'm wrong on that one, please. And then second is, a lot of the dynamics that you said are driving this change are things that I'm sure most other districts are encountering around us. So if you have a sense of, we're looking at about 6% budget cut here for us, is that on par with other districts nearby?
So what we have to do, Nicole, is look at the districts that do not receive concentration funds. We cannot compare ourselves to a district that has a high enough unduplicated pupil count or percentage where they are getting concentration funds. So like San Leandro, which is close to us, San Leandro probably gets another $5 or so million because they have a high UPP. We're at a disadvantage because our UPP does not put us in a bracket where we can get concentration funds. We get supplemental, and we're working on that number, but it's disingenuous to compare us to districts that get that extra funding, because it puts them in a whole different funding bracket. And as it is, I've known other districts that are cutting. I think what do we hear about San Francisco? I've heard 20 million for some districts. We're still in the $7 million range. It is a high percentage of our budget, but we're depending on us as a group to put our heads together and figure out strategies to meet that 7.1%. Did that answer your question, Nicole?
Yep, thank you very much.
And Beatrice, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Pauline, for this information. It's really helpful. And I'm also looking at 23-24 and any savings that you see now in this second interim that we're now in the middle of, close to the end of the year. Are you seeing anything that would happen in budget adjustments this year that would help 24, would help on the way out?
Right, so it did. So we did find, we didn't go through the variance report, which was linked in the presentation. But at the, when we looked at expenses from first interim to second interim, we found areas where we were spending a little bit more. So our utilities went up significantly and they're projected to go up even more. So we're trying to take that into account. But then we had, we looked at budget savings, or where we're truing up our budget based on expenditure trends. But those are one time. So even if I found that we weren't spending all our line items, that's a one-time occurrence. And what I explained earlier in the meeting is, if it's one time, an expenditure or a savings, when it comes time to 24-25, those one-time expenses are either put back in or taken out of 24-25. So 24-25 is what we think this is going to look like, our best estimate at this point, based on the prior year and based on the information that we have at this time. So, so we've already, second interim, we've kind of scrubbed the budget, looked at all the line items, kind of looked at past trends to make sure that we are covering what we think the expenses would be. So when it comes time for us to close the books in September, we're hoping that we're as close as we can be to what we think the actuals are going to be at that time. And of course, as we get additional information, we have to make changes to our budget as well. Any other questions before we move on? Harrison, did you have a question?
No, thank you.
Okay, look like I can't see everybody on the screen. So if there are no other hands, I'll push us on. So Viv, can you go to the next slide? So at this point, we're going to be looking at budget reduction strategies. And these are strategies that we're sharing with SBAC for your feedback. Your feedback can be yes, it can be no, or not yet. But we've put our heads together and we've come up with a list of items that I'm going to go through. And after I've gone through that list, you can kind of stop me if you have questions, actually, probably makes more sense. But after I've presented these strategies, we can take a further look and take a temperature of the room to see what the feedback is in terms of what we're thinking about. So Vivian, if you can go to the next slide, that would be helpful. So again, our superintendent has shared with you the different budget reduction strategies that we've employed. We evaluate and remove vacant positions. We're truing up program costs, evaluating program costs, and making sure the allocation matches the true cost. We eliminate expenses covered in other funding sources. We evaluate annual unexpended funds, which is what you were alluding to, Beatrice. We look for inefficiencies. We identify examples, programs, and positions where we duplicate efforts. We also transfer expenses to other funding sources, and we consolidate and reduce positions and programming. So that's some of the strategies that we actually employ when we're looking at our budget, either to reduce reduce expenses, and we also look at ways that we can increase our revenue as well. Next slide, please, Vivian. So this evening, oh no, go back one. We have one more back. Okay. What happened to our little arrows? Sorry. Forward, Vivian. I think our little arrows came in afterwards, so we can go to the next slide. There we go. So we're focusing on these areas. We're trimming up project costs. We're eliminating expenses in other funding sources. We're evaluating annual unexpended funds, inefficiencies, and transferring expenses to other sources. So what you're going to see on the next slide, when Vivian forwards it, this is a phase one approach. This is the initial phase that we're in terms of looking at our budget reductions. So today we're asking the team to review our strategies, which is an update on implementation of initial strategies. And we're also asking you to analyze budget reduction proposals. So on this slide, there's a link to our budget reductions list that I'm going to be sharing with you on the upcoming slides. But if you want to, there's a link that you can go to, and that has all our proposals there. And the budget reduction list, remember, this is an initial consideration for budget reductions. It is phase one, and we're looking at some of the strategies. We looked at new revenue, transfer in of revenue, which is a one-time transfer. We're looking at our staffing formulas that are already in place for 24-25, and we're looking at our operations. So on the next slide. So we're going to ask everybody to review the proposed reductions. This is a reminder of what we're going to be. And we're gonna do discussions and questions at the end. Initially, we thought we would do it after every bucket, but we thought we could do it at the end. And then we're gonna ask SBAC for just an initial voting in Zoom to kind of determine whether it's a yes vote, a no vote, or a not yet, if you need additional information. So what we're hoping to do is to share information with you and then get your feedback. And then we would take this to the board once we've gotten once we have, this is not going to go to the board as yet. We're still just working on the process and getting feedback from you guys.
So BUSD staff has a raised hand?
Who has a raised hand? Who?
BUSD staff, they don't have the name.
Yes, that's me, BUSD staff. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I heard that Pauline said Iniki is not in the office. I was not in the office. I was on an airplane.
I know, I didn't want to share.
It's okay. I'm excited to share that I just landed in San Diego, and I'm here at the California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators, representing Berkeley Unified School District and all the amazing work that we do for all of our babies, and in particular, our African American students and families. So I apologize for being late and apologize for any background noise, but excited to be here as we are engaging in our first phase of proposing reduction strategies to you all and getting some feedback. One point of clarification, Pauline, we're going to hold the vote to the very end. What we did think about doing is for every section, Pauline, to allow for questions. That way our members can get any kind of clarification they need that can inform their vote at the end. The other thing that I wanted to say was Pauline was doing a great job. So I've been here for about 15, 20 minutes, and I was like, why interrupt her? But just wanted to add some more detail to phase one. You remember those budget reduction strategies that Pauline just reviewed for you, and consolidating programs and people is at the very end of that list. That being said, what we also want to share is that, it's our intent, as we sure it is yours, to make sure that we make reductions as far away from the babies as possible. Everything that we do, we know impacts the experiences and the outcomes of our students. So nothing does not touch a baby, but we're really trying to make sure that we stay as far away from people and programs that directly impact our students as possible. And so what you're going to see this evening are examples of those types of reductions that we feel can provide some substantial movement in trying to make some changes to our budget, and have minimal, if you will, impact to the personnel and the programs that directly serve our students. The process that we're going to go through, as Pauline just shared, is we're going to show you each of those chunks. She talked about transfer in, transfer out options. She talked about operations. So we're going to share with you an excerpt from the spreadsheet that we're going to give you access to in just a moment. Pauline's going to explain the proposed reduction and then give you some time to ask questions about it. And then we'll go to the next chunk of reduction proposals. And one thing just to really stress, and I know it was on the previous slide, but sometimes it's confusing. When you're looking at the actual slide or the Excel spreadsheet, you're going to see the things that we considered, but everything that we considered did not make it to be a final proposal. So I wanted to clarify that as well. So again, we're going to look at each proposal. We're going to engage you some Q&A. And then at the very end, we're going to ask you to vote on each of those. Yes, you think we should go ahead and move with this one as a proposed cut. Reduction opportunity, or no, or not yet. You might have more questions, want us to bring back some more information about that particular proposal. So with that, I'm going to let Pauline take us to the next slide. And Pauline, just to say, hi, I got you. I know you're going to get me later, though, for not speaking up sooner.
Yes, Anika. I was like, yay, she's here. So yeah, okay. So thanks, Anika. So I'm gonna walk us through these recommendations that we have, or considerations. And as Anika states, not everything that was a consideration actually made it as a recommendation. So for example, on this slide, you can see we considered $3.8 million in proposals, but we landed on $2.1 million as a one-time approach. So what we're looking at involves our Fund 20. And our Fund 20 is our reserve for other post-employment benefits. So it's basically our set aside for current employees, for Mildred. Mildred, good. Thanks, Mildred. So what we're looking at is our set aside for our other post-employment benefits, which is our health benefits for current employees and retired employees. So this is a set aside, and we set it aside in Fund 20. Every time we run payroll, every dollar generates like a 0.9% towards this set aside, if you will, but it's not counted towards our retirement because it's not what's called in a dedicated trust. So we're setting it aside to be prudent. Fund 20 currently has $7 million in that account. And what we're proposing is that for 2024-25, we transfer the amount that the general fund would have paid towards this retirement benefit and use that as a savings, a one-time savings, and also use $1.5 million in fund balance as well to meet that to meet our $7.1 million target. So I'm going to open it up for discussions. We have used this strategy in the past. It's not going to impact our retiree benefit because, as I said, this is not in an irrevocable trust. It's set aside to be fiscally prudent, but we're dipping into this account on a one-time basis to meet this $7.1 million, which is a large number. Do we have any questions?
Lindsay Nofeld, and then Vicki Davis.
Okay.
Hi, does this have an effect later on? Like, does it become a future obligation that we need to pay back, or is it just extra from a savings account that you have just in case, like rainy day kind of thing? And how is the pension? Is the pension underfunded or well-funded? Do you have unfunded liability that would affect our teachers later?
So great question. Thanks, Lindsay. So we're on what's called a pay-as-you-go system for retiree benefits at the moment. which means we're obligated to pay for actual costs for retirement. We do not have a future, there is a future liability that's unfunded, and even this set aside doesn't count towards that liability because, as I explained, it has to be in an irrevocable trust for it to reduce that liability. So it's common practice in school districts. We do an actuarial study. We know what that amount is in terms of the future liability, and for it, nobody fully funds it. Berkeley Unified is being prudent in setting aside this amount in Fund 20 to be used for that obligation, but it's not counted towards the liability. It does not impact anyone's retirement. What you're thinking of, possibly PERS and STIRS. Each union group has requirements for their retirees, and it usually caps out at age 65, 62 or 65. So this does not impact anyone's future retirement.
And it does not have to be repaid into the Fund 20.
No, if we suddenly inherit, or we get like really flush, we can consider repaying at this time. But because we're facing significant budget reductions, we recommended using this on a one-time basis. Who else had a question? I can't see. You're welcome, Lindsay.
I did, Vicky Davis.
Hi, Vicky.
Hi there. So just to clarify, are we going to, is the intention to continue putting in that 0.9 at every payroll and then transfer money from this account into the account so that we're not stopping that practice of paying in? Or will we stop paying in addition to transferring funds?
We will continue to pay in. So when we run payroll, we'll still be generating this funding. We'll be taking this amount from the fund balance.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, hey Pauline, this is Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Can you just talk for a minute about, so there's two other items that were considered but aren't being recommended. Can you just talk about those? Why not?
Okay, so I can speak about, all right. So the carryover funds, we're still exploring a use for those. Carryover funds are one time. So for the pre-K one time, we identified $350,000 that it wasn't captured anywhere in the second interim or financial statements. And then we also determined that was $135,000 in COVID money that could be carried over. That one doesn't have an expiration. The pre-K, I don't remember when that expires. But these two funding sources, they're carryover funds and they're one time. But if we can identify something in the general fund that can be used on a one-time basis to address these funds, we'll bring that back to you at a later date. And then our Prop 28 funding, that's actually for arts and music funding for the sites. And as I noticed here, we have not identified a way that funding can be used to relieve expenses in the unrestricted general fund. And there are very strict requirements in terms of using this funding. But we just wanted everyone to be aware that, we are facing cuts, but we did get this $1.2 million in funding for the sites. And the significant funding in this stream is $400,000 for the high school, and everybody else has it varies depending on sites. So so we looked at this, we considered it in cabinet, we considered it in our budget leadership team. We have not identified a way that this can relieve the general fund, but we wanted everyone to know that we've actually looked at several different areas. And in this particular pot, we have found $2.1 million. And again, that's one time. And you've heard me say over and over, the 7.1 million is an ongoing requirement, but we found $2.1 million as a one-time approach. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, well, if hearing none, and again, if you want to, you can look at the budget list. It's all listed there. So, so why does it say that? Okay, so we've done 15. All right, next slide, please, Vivian. I thought I was seeing doubles for a minute. Okay, so another thing that we looked at this point, we've already done the teacher template. We've shared a draft with P&O. We have gotten the projections from Francisco from Student Services, and we've also from our projections from our enrollment office. And then we've also okay. So Lindsay, so we'll come back to that one then. So and we've also looked at the staffing formula for the sites for that are funded by the general fund. So when we're looking at our classroom teachers, looking from template to template, just in terms of what we were required to fill, there's it's anywhere from 4.5 to 5.6 FTE less. So we'll be required to pay for 5.6 FTE less in 24-25, and our average teacher cost is about 127,000. So that $711,000 can be used as an ongoing general fund approach to that $7.1 million. Because remember, when we did the target, I shared this what we knew at the second interim. So none of this information has been put into the budget at this time. And then when we do the teacher template, we also get an enrollment projection. And as you may, or well, the assumption at second interim was CBEDS enrollment, and we kept it flat in our projections. So if we're going to use the projected number, the projections that Francisco has shared with us, and that we've used the staff to come up with our classroom teachers, that's already been shared with the sites. We're looking at an increase in ADA of 142. And when we look at the ADA to enrollment ratio, it's going to give us an additional ADA of 135. So the LCFF per ADA is at 12,000. So we're scoring $1.7 million based on the teacher template, which has already been shared with P&O. So that number was a little bit higher. So that some people may note it. Well, I'll share that internally. And then again, we've done the staffing formula for the school sites, and that's for our school service assistants and our noon supervision. And it's across the elementary schools. It's a difference. We're required to fund 3.05 less FTE, and we've listed what we think that cost is with benefits. So in all, we consider $2.6 million, and we're actually scoring 2.6 million ongoing towards our target. Do we have any discussion on that?
Vicky and then Nicole.
Okay.
Thank you. So my first question is clarifying the 1.7 million for the ADA is an increase in revenue, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then the second question based on the teacher template. So I did see that we did the HQI teacher template yesterday at P&O. And you're saying that there's 5.6 less teachers needed. And my question is, are those 5.6 positions part of the 133 that we were looking at? That potentially would not be filled. I think often when we need a less teacher, the teacher goes on TSA. So would this mean 5 teachers would, in theory, because we don't need them, be laid off? Or will attrition from retirement and whatnot cover those 5 positions?
So I think they'll be reassigned, but we have Assistant Superintendent Tobias Espinoza. So Sam, do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, so it would be covered by attrition. We have teachers who are retiring and resigning. And so it would be covered by that. It would not be any more layoffs or any additional removal. It's covered by the teacher template, and it does not include vacancies. It's only positions that are filled this year that would be less for next year.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, please. Great. Hi, Pauline.
Hi.
I'm trying to tie together the concept of increased enrollment and less teacher need. And so the only way I'm thinking that is that this year we must have, fewer kids in the classroom than we expected. So basically our classrooms there's extra space in our current classrooms. And so because we had lower enrollment, maybe too late in the game. And so we're able to fit in an additional 200 and some students we're able to rationalize those classrooms now. Is that what's happening?
I think that's a good analysis. Yes. So, so every year we do our projections, we receive projections and we staff at that projection. Those projections, because we're funded on, we have to look at seabeds. If that number comes in, whatever that number comes in at October, we kind of use that to project out. That's a more realistic projection than the projection that was used when we for staffing. So we are going to need less teachers because of the, depending on grades, and we're using the actual class size averages. This 5.6 less in the study is based on the template, not necessarily who we have paid. It's just from the template, we know we don't have to fill as many positions. So it's just from the previous template to this particular template. So the staffing that was done at the prior year was a little bit higher than the 9077. The 9077 is seabeds.
Okay. And then I guess I'm wondering, because if that higher enrollment does not come in.
We have already staffed at that level. And it's going to be, we still get a bit of a benefit from the 3-year rolling average for next year, but the year after that, it goes away. So we wouldn't recognize that the total loss, if it came in at a lower level. But we're just based on budgeting and the information that we have, we are comfortable in projecting that amount right now. So less teachers. And yes, the enrollment is going up based on the prior years, based on what we have in the budget right now.
Okay, thank you so much.
So Matt had a question.
Rebecca's hand, I see Rebecca's hand
Well,
up.
Matt had his hand up. He may have lowered.
Vicky asked my question. Thanks. So I'm all
Okay.
good.
So Rebecca Levinson.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to understand the staffing school sites based on the formula and the 3.5 FTE, and you mentioned something about lunchtime, and is this formula then, this thinking due to less students on elementary playgrounds, therefore you need less staffing? Can you help me understand the why of this one?
So we have I don't know if Sam wants to jump in on this, but we have a staffing model based on enrollment. And for the last 2 years, the district has been staffing at the 21, 22 level. So this formula has been in place for some time, but for 2 years, we were staffing at the higher level. So this year, we're recognizing the FTE in the formula, and that requires 3.05 less FTE. Sam, did you want to?
So this reflects 2 different positions. So one is the school campus aide, which is otherwise known as the noon supervisor. It was converted to the school campus aide in 2018. And then the other is a school service assistant, which is a clerical position in the office. both of them are based on the amount of students at the school site, and the formula was created probably 2018 or before, regarding how many lunches the school sites have, the capacity, the amount of playgrounds, all of that in terms of providing proper supervision during lunchtime, and then for the school service assistants to be able to handle the amount of clerical work that's needed to support the students. And so this would be right sizing it. We did a hold harmless during COVID, where we maintained what we were prior to COVID. And now we're adjusting the formula, adjusting back down to the regular formula for the first time since COVID hit.
You're welcome, Rebecca. She has said thank you in the chat. Vicky?
So I guess to further clarify on that, that 3.05 FTE is across several positions, I'm assuming. And so, for example, you know, a large size school like Malcolm X has a reduced enrollment than what it did a few years ago. Does that mean there will be actual staff members who might be 0.8 who are going to a 0.6, and it's going to affect particular staff people? And if that's the case, I know like on the HQI for faculty, there's a line that it trues them up to a whole person, but does that mean these positions will not be whole people? And they'll
So
be like, go ahead.
Yeah, so the majority of these positions are part-time. For the school campus aides, the majority of them are like about 2.25 or 0.27 positions across all of the school sites. Some school sites have a little bit larger because they have maybe 3 lunches versus 2 lunches, those type of things. The school service assistants, the clerical positions, are 0.4 positions. And so these are all part-time. The school service assistants, yes, do mean layoffs because all those positions are currently filled. And those people are being noticed. And the resolution went to the board at the last board meeting for those positions. For the school campus aides, some of the sites have vacancies that we are able to eliminate that then mean we don't have to lay anybody off. And then others have a few small layoffs involved because of it.
And then would this be a case then, for example, that the school site councils would potentially either want to use some of their site funds to hold up that position, or like PTA funds to hold up that position, because the money they're getting from the district will be reduced from what they currently have, correct?
That is an option that they can consider, yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, also a last question. I guess before we vote on whether or not we like that, are we able to see like where those cuts are actually happening? Is it equivalent across from every elementary school, the same 0.1, or is it vary from school to school? And can we see that detail?
I can find out if we can share that detail with you, but it does vary per school site because it's based on enrollment. So it depends on how many students are at that school.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so we can go to the next slide, Vivian. So this has to do with staffing considerations. The first proposal, and this was based on meeting with the operations management team. So Sheila was in the meeting, and previously we were going to freeze 2 positions for just 1 more year, which means they would have been back online in 24-25. So we're considering freezing those positions for 1 more year, which is a one-time solution. And I know some of our managers have been asked to drive buses, but that has to do with absenteeism as opposed to having additional positions. So these positions haven't been filled now for 2 years, and we're proposing that we keep them frozen or not fill them for 1 more year. So that's approximately $60,000 each with benefits. So we're looking at $120,000. And then for our driver, this is one of the areas that we're moving it to an alternative funding source. So we're transferring 0.5 of our driver to nutrition services. And we had a discussion with both groups, and this is something that would actually work. So we're also looking, and this was a prior year approach that we had when we looked at the TSA handouts, moving the TSA back to the sites, but we're also doing a vacancy reduction elimination. We're still working on that, where positions that are not needed and that have not been filled for a significant amount of time would be eliminated, or they will be frozen. So we're either going to reduce positions or eliminate positions. And that requires a lot of thought, because we're looking at the positions that are currently vacant, what those positions actually do. Can we live without these positions, and who's actually doing the work now? And if the work has not been done, we're going to be bringing this back to the team in terms of reductions and eliminations. Yes, Matt.
Thank you. Sorry, my screen's not on. I'm not feeling good today.
Oh.
I see that, basically both the district TSAs and the vacancies are to be determined, haven't been figured out yet. I'm hoping that mostly for the district TSAs, because the other ones are vacant, if we could get some more information about this when we meet again, probably in 2 weeks, I imagine, or whenever we meet next, just because these are people that will end up getting reassigned to sites. It impacts master schedules. There's like a lot of impacts on this. And so the earlier the better to kind of know this information. It also affects the rehiring process. We have a lot of temp and Pro 1 teachers that I know principals want to hire, but they can't be given contracts until this piece is figured out. So I'm just hoping that it's just an ask that this piece gets some special attention in the next couple weeks, just so at our sites people can know what's what. Thank you.
Okay, sure, ma'am. Any other questions? Okay,
I
so
have a quick question about the bus drivers.
yes.
So is the Longfellow bus being used?
It is being used, but I don't know exactly how many students are riding the Longfellow bus. I can get that information for you and bring it back to the next meeting.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's any efficiencies there, if it's not being used. And if it's not being used, then is it because of a route or a timing issue or zero period kind of like thing? Or because it's just not helpful to people?
As I said, I know it is being used, so I can get the number of students that are actually on the Longfellow bus and let you know. I'll bring it back to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? So can we go to the next slide? So this is a general increase in our indirect cost rate. So every year we present our indirect costs, and then we're projecting expenses, and this is actually determined by CDE. So our indirect cost rate went from 6.44 to 7.14, I think. So just based overall, just looking at our overall expenses and what the general and a word of just context, the indirect cost rate is what the general fund charges restricted programs and restricted programs and other funds for operational costs. So and that rate is approved by the CDE. So for 24-25, there's a slight increase. We think it's going to give us at least $60,000 overall, but that's depending, of course, on expenses. So we've scored $60,000 here. When we met with operations, we've identified their elevator lines that are not being used. So we are proposing to end those lines or to end the cost for those lines. That's going to result in $125,000. And then we're proposing that we go from Zoom we're going to be using Google Meet for district meetings, Zoom for hybrid meetings, and there is a fund set aside to pay the hybrid cost for the boardroom. So this would be the savings for the unrestricted general fund. So we're looking at 155 in ongoing costs, and the indirect cost is just one time because we're going to get the benefit in 24-25. Any questions there? Vicky's your hand up. Nicole, Vicky. Vicky, you're muted.
Sorry, yeah, quick question. I'm not sure if Kathy is here, but we were presented some budgets yesterday at P&O that had an indirect cost, and I was curious if this new indirect cost percentage was in those budgets, or would those budgets then change to this new number?
No, your teacher template or the transfer already has
was-
that increase.
Okay, so like the VAPA budget was one of them with an indirect cost, and so that already has an increased indirect cost percentage.
I will confirm that and bring
Okay.
it back. I know the teacher template that was, oh, Nicole, you have a friend. The indirect cost in the teacher template was reflected the new rate, and I will
Okay.
confirm whether that's same for VAPO.
Thank you.
Yes, Nicole.
Yeah, I was wondering, it seems as though that would be an ongoing increased revenue, no? Because the indirect cost being something that we, it's an annual expense.
It may go back down in 24. The rate fluctuates.
Oh.
So I'm counting. I mean, it may go back down. It's set every year based on our expenses. So 7.41 is high. And 6 point whatever is the norm. So this may be just a one-time thing.
Okay, great.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So let's look at the total. So looking at everything that we've recommended, we considered 6.8 million. We found 2.8 ongoing, 2.3 one time, which we know it's not good fiscal policy. The state does it, but it's not the best. So we have found $5.1 million towards our $7.1 million. And this is just phase one. And the preferred thing would be to have everything ongoing, but this is what we're sharing with you at this time. And we can take questions overall. Steve, is your hand up? Or are you stretching?
Just the way I sit.
Okay, so let's see. At this point, Anika. Now that she's here.
I'm still here, Pauline, yes. So at this point, we again just want to make sure that there's no questions on any of the items proposed over the last several slides. Because if they're not, we're gonna now.
I have a question, Anikia. It's Lindsay. May I ask it?
Yes, Lindsay, hi.
Hi. So could you please explain the rationale between using one-time cuts for an ongoing deficit and the reason I can guess the reason why only $6.8 million was explored to address a 7.1 target, but if you could explain those two things, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were sorry. Go ahead, Pauline.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. That's fine.
So I just wanted to clarify, we were not, we do know, and Pauline has said it even again this afternoon, that it's not the best strategy to use one-time dollars to address ongoing reduction needs. And so this is just like we said, phase one. We're not stopping here. We will continue to look for ongoing reductions that we can use in addition to, or perhaps instead of the one-time reductions that we made. However, at the same time, we know that 7.1 is a pretty significant number and a pretty significant reduction. And so we're trying to be as resourceful as possible. Again, looking at those various reduction strategies that we showed you all previously to, again, make cuts and save us some dollars that are in some ways low hanging fruit for phase one, and not directly impact our people and our programs that directly work with our students. So in this first phase, Lindsay, and for everyone else, we're going to ask you to make some decisions or to say you need more information, but we're going to come back to you with even more proposals for reductions. And ultimately, as a team, we're going to have to decide which one we want to go with. So we might decide, hey, we only want to go with ongoing reductions. We're not going to do any one time, but we also might find out that the ongoing reductions have significant impact to our programs and our people that work with our students. So we might want to actually leverage some of those one times. So it's not that we were preferring one over the other. We've been brainstorming, and quite honestly, we've put all things on the table. Again, trying to first address those things that we consider low hanging fruit that kind of will send the smallest of ripples throughout our community. If that makes any sense, Lindsay. No? Yes? Does that make sense, Lindsay? Okay, good. Then the
It
next
took me a
question
while
was,
to find the thingamajigger. Sorry.
What?
and I think the next question you asked is, why did we only do the 6.8 when we know we have a 7.1? So also want to clarify, which is probably the same answer, that this is just the first phase. We're not done looking at efficiencies, looking at where we can true up things, et cetera. So we're going to come with you to you all with more proposals. So the number of 5,000,11566 that we're bringing to you today is just stage one. We didn't limit ourselves to 6.8. Any other question? Vicky?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Of the 133 vacant positions, 22 of them were marked as potential ones we could get rid of, not all from the general fund. I didn't see that on this list of how many of those might be from the general fund. And so I was just curious if we know what that amount is. That's part one. The second thing, I asked this at the joint committee meeting in the Jamboard, so didn't get an answer yet. But if that money for these empty positions is encumbered and then we decide not to budget it next year, does that mean we get the encumbered money back because it was never spent, and we get a savings from it not budgeting it? So is that double? How does that work?
Pauline, did you hear Vicky's last question?
Yes. So Vicky, if the position is vacant, what we've done at second interim, we've taken the savings for those positions and either reduced the budget, the line item, or we have transferred that money to where there are additional expenses. So in this particular year, it only gets encumbered if they're actually paid. So they're in the budget. So the budget is based on position control. Our actual expenses and our projections is only if staff get paid. So if they're not paid, there's an ending balance that we've already trued up our budget, or we've already projected our expenses in terms of a trend. So those savings would be one time, and we've taken them at 23-24, but they're back in the budget at 24-25 because we're assuming that the staffing is going to continue at the same rate. So if these positions are eliminated from the budget, when we do position control next year, those line items will be less because we would not be budgeting for them. So we're not scoring it twice because they're not paid. So they're not encumbered. And if we have identified them as true vacant positions that are not needed next year, they will be removed from position control and will not be included in the budget.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Totally. Thank you. And then my last question is, when we do our voting, can we separate out the the 5.4 for the teachers and then the 3.04 for staff as two separate votes? Because one is a vote of that's going to be filled by attrition and the other one's a vote that includes layoffs.
When we get to that section, Vicky, can you just flag it for us? We're gonna go section by section. So
Yes,
can you just
thank
do it
you.
again so I can
Yes,
follow it out right?
yes.
And then in terms of your question regarding the vacancies, you're right. We presented that at the last SBAC, I believe. That's actually agendized for the next SBAC, Vicky, because we're still doing some scrubbing and cleaning. We might come back to you with even a higher number of vacancies, but we definitely will come back with more clarification around where the funding for that I think it was like 23 or 21 are coming from. So that's already agendized for the next one, and you'll see that in the next step slide. Ms. Mildred?
Oh, Mildred has, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I have a quick question just regarding the BSEP funds, especially why Kathy is here, and I really appreciate what she stated earlier and everyone that supported the whole BSEP fund. That was great, and it was an experience. Just for clarity purpose, and I want to make sure that I understand, and looking at the list of possible layoffs, I know nothing is guaranteed right now, but still looking at the list, I noticed that there are staff members that are paid from BSEP funds. With BSEP being approved for the 25-26 school year, the current BSEP funding right now goes into the end of 24-25. Am I correct? And if that is the case, why do we have staffing on the layoff list for BSEP funds? Can anyone answer that for me?
I can. So the positions that are funded by BSEP that are on that list are the positions that are site discretionary funds at the high school. The high school has an SSC process, their school site council, where they come up with a plan every year, and they have a specific process they use to create that plan. And that plan has not yet been approved.
What did you say? Again, you said it was what? SS what?
It's the site discretionary funds from BSEP for the high school. And so there's a plan that the school site council or SSC comes up with every year and approves. And they have a separate process that's very different from any of our other sites in how they do that. And so once that plan gets approved, then that will determine whether or not we rescind those layoffs. But that's why those positions were put on that list as opposed to other BSEP positions or any other positions.
And do you know when they meet or when that plan is? When
I don't know the specific date, but I believe it's May is when they have their finalized plan.
Thank you.
I'm taking notes so we can try to get you that information about when BHS's school site council, not safety, sorry, school site council meets and around when they're making those decisions.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And then just to reiterate, just because they're on the list doesn't mean that there was any indication or implication from BHS site council that they would not continue with those roles. It's just because the plan. Any more questions? Okay, so Ms. Vivian, if I can ask you to go back to slide 23. It's where our first chunk of proposals can be reviewed. And what we're asking for our members to do is to vote on each of the proposals. If you vote yes, you're going to use the reaction key and do the green check box. If it's no, you're going to use the reaction key to do the red X. And if you are saying not now, which means you need more information, et cetera, you're going to do a coffee cup, but you also need to put in the chat what your not now is for, or I might actually unmute or ask you to unmute to ask you. I want to clarify that as we go through these items, you voting yes does not mean this is for sure the strategy we're going to go with. It also does not mean that we're taking that strategy to the board. We do plan to give an update to our board around our discussions here in SBAC and different thinkings and comments have come out of SBAC, but we are not making any final decisions. We are, though, needing to get a sense of where you all are on each of these items, or sorry, each of these proposals, because we need to know if, hey, do we really have, a budget reduction of, $5 million? Or is SBAC saying, no way, we don't want to do 3 of these, and we only have a reduction of about, $3 million. So us kind of knowing as we go along helps us figure out how much more digging and how much further down on those budget reduction strategies do we need to go and move. Nothing's final. So you're just giving us your feedback right now to help us know like how much more we need to find, or to help us engage in a conversation at the next meeting when we find other things, what we're considering as a team and what we're not considering as a team. At the end of this entire process, you all, after we've looked at and reviewed a number of budget reduction proposals, then the SBAC will decide which proposals or which reductions we want to advance. But the ones that we advance will come from the list of the ones that you've approved in these meetings. If you mark an item not now, again, you're just asking for more information, and we'll come back to the SBAC with additional information that might better help you make a decision around that particular budget reduction strategy. So get yourselves ready. That reaction section is the little happy face with the plus sign on the side of his forehead. You're gonna check the yes, green. You're gonna check the red X for no. And then if you need more information and you wanna say not now, you're gonna do the coffee cup. This is consistent with how P&O does it. So most of you all who've been to P&O I don't even know what the coffee cup is for. So we've now made the coffee cup have some usefulness. We are happy to stop and get questions along the way. Lindsay, you can put your vote in the chat then if you're not able to do. Oh, thank you. The coffee cup means I'm aware. Thank you, Lindsay. So we're gonna go through each one. Vivian and I are gonna be recording. Remember, this meeting is recorded as well. So anything you put in the comments or in the chat will be also recorded. So again, I asked Vivian to go to slide 23. That's where our first set of reductions was listed, reminding you that everything listed here was not a proposal. These were all the things that we considered. So for the first item, which is for the amount of $628,000, suspend retiree benefit rate for 1 year for the unrestricted general fund and transfer the savings from Fund 20. Can you please vote now?
Now remember, this is only voting members.
Thank you for saying that, Ms. Vivian. Only members of SBAC can vote. We appreciate the members of the public for being here and listening, but please, 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 it makes it so much easier for us to do it one time just with our voting members. So we're asking for the voting members to vote.
Where do we vote? I'm sorry, Superintendent, where? In the chat?
You're gonna use that the reaction box at the bottom. So the check is, you got me? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Vivian, you're recording the votes with me?
Yes, ma'am.
I see all checks.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna go to the next proposal. Sorry.
Natasha. Yes.
I think I'm doing this wrong. Well, no, I know that, but I just don't see where am where I'm supposed to do this at. Because all I have is, am I supposed to be on is there a link or something that I'm supposed to be in?
No. So go to the bottom of your Zoom, the Zoom toolbox, tool menu, toolbar, sorry.
Reaction.
And there's a little, the happy face says reactions.
Yes, ma'am.
And then if you're a yes, you're gonna click the check mark.
Yes.
If you're a no, you're gonna click the X, and then the coffee cup is you need more information or not now.
Right, but the question is that it's gonna go into the chat, right, where it says to everyone.
No, you click on it and it's gonna show on your square or your rectangle. Sorry, I'm a whole teacher. On the rectangle, it's gonna show what your vote was. So we'll all see it. There you go. You clicked yes.
Oh, I got it. Okay, sorry. All right, thank you.
That's all right. Every day something new. I'm with you. Okay. Ready, Ms. Vivian?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Vivian, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Vivian, go back to slide 23, please. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the next item on slide 23 was for the amount of 1.5 million. That was to transfer in additional amount from Fund 20. Please vote now.
I think you have to clear out the old votes now. Isn't there a button where you clear it out? Vivian?
No, it says no polls or quizzes created. You guys can't do that on your screen?
So just if you, so what you should do, Stephen, is just you should uncheck. You guys have to uncheck yourselves, I believe. We can't clear you out.
No, you have to clear it.
Right, so right now, Stephen, I see you as a check, as a yes.
Okay, there you go.
Is that
You
accurate?
removed it. You're clear now.
Yep.
So everyone else has to, okay. So what's up now? Is everyone's second vote on this?
Everyone second vote. And Miss Vivian's recording.
Frank. Lindsay. Yep, everyone's a yes.
Okay, so those were the two proposals for this slide. Can we go to the next slide, please, Ms. Vivian? Okay, so our next proposals are listed here. There are three. The first one is for the amount of $711,200 ongoing, and that is for the reduction in classroom teachers based on the 24-25 teacher template. I see one not now.
Frank has a coffee cup. Is that not now?
Frank and Mildred have not now. Go ahead and tally the other ones for us, please, Ms. Vivian.
Dang, Frank, we really do be in sync, and I can't even see you on my screen.
Ms. Mildred and Frank, I just want to clarify, is your not now because you're not ready to make this vote or because you need more information? And if so, what information do you need us to bring back to you?
So I'm saying that because I'm not ready to make that vote, and I would like to receive more information. Yes, ma'am.
Got it. Thank you. Mr. Frank?
Yeah, same here. More information.
Thank you. The next item or next proposal for y'all to consider, please remember to uncheck. Thank you, Steve, for making that clear to us. Make sure you uncheck. The next one is for the amount of one, go back, Ms. Vivian, please, to 24. Ms. Vivian ready to go, y'all. She clicking. Okay, the next one is for the $1.7 million. It's for projected increase in enrollment ADA based on the 24-25 projections from the enrollment office. Go ahead and vote. Ms. Mildred, I'm confirming that you, okay, that's what I'm saying.
Down with your LUC.
Dan, you have a coffee cup. You want to, you're saying not now, is that correct?
Well, I'm saying that I'm just questioning the validity of this projected increase, and it's a big number.
Got it. Thank you.
If it's true, then I have no problem, but we don't know that.
Okay, Mr. Dan, thank you. Listen, we're gonna cross our fingers and pray and do whatever y'all do to hope that that number is accurate, because you are right. That is a big number that could really help us. Okay, thank you, Prince. Go ahead and unvote. The last item on this slide is for the amount of $180,000 and some change. This is for staffing schools based on the formula. Sorry, staffing school sites based on the formula. Natasha has a question.
Hi, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself quickly enough to respond to Mr. Lindheim's comment. My experience has been if those numbers are coming out of the admissions office, that those numbers tend to be very accurate. I can think of only one time in history when there was a last minute addition to some students that came in at Berkeley High that we were significantly off by anything more than a fraction of a percentage. So that's been my experience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Natasha. And what we'll do, we'll try to bring back some comparative data, some historical data for you, Dan, that may help you vote next time. Okay.
Sure.
That said, I think everyone else was a yes, so we will get you that information. So make sure you're unvoting, friends.
No.
Say it again.
I was a no, not a yes.
No, I know.
4 yeses, 4 no's, 3. Yeah, it's recorded.
Oh, the last one. I'm sorry. Thank you for that. Sorry about that. I'm back to this next one, which is staffing school site leaders based on the formula for 180,626. We're counting votes now. Ms. Mildred and Vicky, I see a no. Lindsay, I see a no. Just confirming, no need to explain.
Yes,
Making
ma'am.
sure it's right. Okay, and then Frank, I see not now. I see it not now, Frank. I'm just gonna say that that's a not now.
Yeah,
There you-
it's a not now, but it's probably
Okay.
leaning towards a no, but I just need more information.
More information. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Vivian, go to the next slide. This is our next set of reductions. There's multiple things on this sheet, but we're only looking at two proposals. The first is for the amount of $20,000 one time. And that is for transportation department to continue to freeze the bus driver positions. Go ahead and vote, please. Stephen, Ms. Mildred, and Frank, I see 3 no's, just confirming, no need to explain. Ms. Vivian, you good?
Yes.
Okay, the next one is for $38,000, that's ongoing purchasing and transfer of 0.5 FTE driver to NS. Go ahead and vote. Ms. Mildred and Frank confirming that it's not now.
Ma'am, I would like to find out where the budget currently is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's that way now, but I just want some confirmation.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next slide, please. I believe this is our last set, friends. Sorry about that. These are staffing considerations. The first one is a one-time cut of the amount of $60,000 for indirect costs. Go ahead and vote, please. Sorry, I'm scrolling. Ms. Vivian, are you good?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Our next one is for ongoing cuts to general fund of $125,000. And that is for IT, reduced budget for elevator lines. Go ahead and vote, please.
Stephen?
I'm gonna vote yes, but I feel the way Dan felt on that one. How in the world do you have $125,000 worth of phone lines that can be canceled in the elevators? I question that number, but I vote yes to whatever savings you have.
We'll try to bring back that information for you, Steve, even though it looks like the majority of folks are a yes. Thank you. Last one is the ongoing cut of $30,000, and that is, yeah, it's for Zoom. You guys Google Meet. Okay, that's fine. Zoom is moving to Google Meet for dish meetings, and then Zoom for hybrid for 30,000. Go ahead and vote.
So would these meetings still be on Zoom?
This one will still be on Zoom. No, actually, no. This will be Google Meet, right, Pauline? This is not a hybrid meeting. This one, oh, you guys.
Yep.
We should do a vote of how
It will
many
be,
like
it will
Google
be,
Meet.
it will be Google Meet.
Nobody
Sorry,
likes
guys.
Google Meet.
Sorry,
Nobody
Nobody
likes
likes
it.
Google Meet.
horrible.
It doesn't
Google
work.
Meet is
It
terrible.
works, it
Horrible.
works.
Okay, but friends, this is not
Yeah,
a
take
Google
one for the
Meet.
children.
This is not Google Meet. So listen, okay, look, and I see all those X's go up. I shouldn't have done that. I was being so unbiased and neutral.
Wow.
So I'm sorry, that was me, bad facilitation. You guys, we are not voting on if we like Zoom versus Google. This is not Mercedes versus BMW. This is a $30,000 ongoing reduction that would cause us a slight inconvenience, and you don't look as cute on Google Meet, by the way, but Just want to make sure your votes reflect that and not your preference. They still didn't change it. Pauline, I'm sorry, I failed this. Okay, so this is most no's. Good Lord, we should give some feedback to Google Meet.
I
Okay,
prefer
so
Zoom.
I do too, but okay. Ms. Vivian, you got those?
Yes.
I apologize, Pauline. That was bad of me. Those were all of our proposals for this afternoon, all of our budget reduction proposals. What we're going to do is we're going to just create a list with each of the proposals, as well as how many were yeses, how many were nos, and how many were not nows. And we will have that for you all at the next meeting. Can you go to the next slide, please? The next 2 slides, please. The next 3 slides, actually. Ms. Vivian, go to slide 30. One more. I like 2 more because we already did there we are. So at our next meeting, what we want to do is bring back to you just a recap of what happened today. Go back, Ms. Vivian, Ms. Vivian is in a hurry, y'all. I'm trying to, it's 1 minute. We got 1 minute, Ms. Vivian. I promise we won't go over. No, I don't promise. I'm going to go over. So at the next meeting, what we're going to do is come back to you and share with you, again, what you all just voted, a recap of what you all just voted for these phase 1 proposals. We're also going to come back to you with another phase of proposals, some more reduction solutions to offer you to engage in. And then we're going to definitely come back with the vacancy update that Ms. Vicky mentioned. We also are going to come back with some more information about those legal costs that we discussed at the previous meeting, as well as contracts and programs that you saw at the previous meeting. And again, your input on some next steps. Again, none of this is final, so we're not making any decisions based on what you said. It just helps us move more efficiently, but we will be providing a board an update from today's meeting in between this meeting and our next meeting. Next slide. Our next meeting, if this is correct, is on March 27th at 4 p.m. And before closing this meeting, I just wanted to thank you all for being here, and thank you for your thoughtful engagement. And 2, thank the team, thank Pauline and other members of exec, and quite honestly, our extended execs who really were trying to brainstorm how we can make these reductions in ways that, again, makes little small ripples, because every change makes an impact, but keeping them as far away from the babies as possible, but also really think about those low-hanging fruit. And some of the things that you saw on here were examples of what we say is low-hanging fruit that has, the lowest impact. But we know we are going to have to discuss what the impact of all these decisions are. And that's going to be one of our aspects, because we have to be honest about what are we giving up, what are we trading, and what are we doing less of, or what are we no longer doing as we make budget reductions. Because you can have anything, you can do anything, but you cannot do and you cannot have everything. So appreciate your engagement. I also wanted to just shout out Vicky. Yesterday we were in the P&O meeting, and Vicky was an excellent model of the role that we believe all of you should play as advisors, which is that liaison role, which entails sharing information. So she went to P&O, and there was a whole item on the P&O agenda that was SBAC update, where she gave a high level of summary of what we've been doing in SBAC, and also what we've been doing in another meeting called Joint Advisory. So I'm sure you all do that, but you wanted to use that as a reminder for you all to do that. So whether you're BCCE or BFT, whether you are on PAC or whatever groups or committees you represent, please, please, please go back to your groups and share with them highlights of these meetings and get their input so that you can bring them back to these meetings. Because when you are voting, remember, you're not just voting for yourself, you're also voting for that group that you represent. That said, again, I'm in San Diego. I'm about to get ready to go speak, and I have to moderate a panel tomorrow morning. And I'm so, so excited to be able to represent this group and represent Berkeley Unified at the conference here in San Diego. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. You guys will see before then. Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.